Focus is very, very, very hard, but it can become a habit. Look, it's really, I wanted to focus on one big thing a month. And so for you out there in listener land, it could be I'm going to focus on sales for the first month. That's what I did. But we actually had a record amount of sales for that year coming out of that month. That's how important focus is.
Well, Erik, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Seeing you at CREI Summits really was, it was a special moment having you up on stage and listening to you. And so thank you for taking the time today.
No, of course. It's great to see you. And the CRI Summit was awesome. It was so fun. It was great to see everyone down there.
Yeah, they really put a special community together. What Ken Ashley has done with that group, it's amazing for our industry. And so I'm really glad you got to become a part of it. Now I want to kind of touch on your book because the Focus Project, which was brilliant, by the way. I want to go into how you came up with the idea of recording everything, the 12 months of going through what you went through every day and the experiences you had. But let's kind of get a background on you. I mean, I've run into so many people that know you now, but let's have a little background on you. I know that you've been in 55 countries and have over 50 million people you've touched. Voted #2 most likable author behind J.K. Rowling, which I had no idea that was a thing, but congratulations on that one.
I didn't either until they sent me a note.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, still. And I can attest to that. I met you in an elevator, and obviously you stand out because you're what, 6'5"?
Yeah, 6'6", 6'7", yeah.
Oh, you're that okay.
Yeah.
I still was like up to here, so that couple inches didn't really. All I was looking at was your chest, and then you had the green glasses on, so I know this is Erik. And I introduced myself, and you were very kind, and that says a lot about a person, So I appreciate you being.
Well, no, thank you, and right back at you.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into. Our industry is ripe with people that are unfocused. And, I say that when I'm looking in a mirror because I am one that, early on in my career, I had a tech company, a property management company, a brokerage company. I had my own thing that I was doing. I was all over the place. And, after, reading your book, it was all the telltale signs that I could have had a lot more focus and probably found a lot more success early on. Can you kind of walk us through what made you want to write this book or walk us through your ideas?
Yeah, no, exactly. A little background for the listeners and viewers is, so I grew up in the tech space. I grew up in Detroit, fell into it backwards. I helped program Cadillac.com when I was an intern. And so I've literally been on the tech space for 20 years. And I wrote a book called Socialnomics in 2009, telling people that future is actually all about social media. It's not just for teenagers, which at the time people thought it was crazy because MySpace was the biggest thing and they thought it wasn't for governments, it wasn't for adults, it wasn't for businesses. And so that launched me into the career that I do now. So since 2009, I've written 6 books and I speak primarily around the world, as you mentioned, been blessed to go to over 55 countries. And that's what I primarily deal with. But the last book, you're like, well, how does that fit into your previous 5 books that are all around really the category of digital leadership or the future? And they go hand in glove because I quickly realized working with all leaders across all industries that if you don't focus, if you're not focused on big things versus busy ones, you're not going to get anything done. So ironically enough, it's sort of an anti-venom to the first book, which was Socialnomics, which said, hey, you got to get into this stuff because it's going to revolutionize the world. And then all of a sudden people are living inside their phone. They can't get their face out of their phone. I'm like, whoa. You guys went too far into it. There's a balance. So kind of back up and balance it out. So it's Jetsons and Flintstones. It's that offline and the online. And so the Focus Project came about primarily because I was wrestling with it as well. I'm sitting here, I own my own company, and I go, why is every night my hair's on fire? And I go, I'm not doing that again tomorrow.
Right.
And then all of a sudden tomorrow comes the exact same thing. So I go, I got to solve for this. And the more people I talk to, whether it's in the commercial real estate industry, whether it was a school teacher, superintendent, whether it's a CEO of a tech company, we're all struggling with it. We're all struggling with how to focus on big things versus busy ones. We're running 1,000 miles an hour and weren't getting anywhere. So that's where the book was birthed. It was supposed to be a year project. It turned into a 2-year project because that's how hard focus is.
Yeah.
It really is difficult. And so the three things that I learned from the process of doing the project and writing the book, and the project, for those that haven't read the book, it's really, I wanted to focus on one big thing a month. And so for you out there in listener land, it could be, I'm going to focus on sales for the first month. That's what I did. Then the second month, it might be something personal. It's like, I'm going to organize. I'm going to spend, this month is really about getting everything organized in my house. So it all depends on what your focus is. But that was the genesis of the project. It was supposed to be a year, turned into 2 year. But the most important thing for listeners out there, what did I learn from this process? And obviously, Joe, you're going to have some specific questions. And I'm going to
Yeah.
be quiet in a second. This is the longest I've
I
probably
want
ever
to hear how you
spoken.
came up with those 11 topics. How did you choose those?
Yeah, exactly. But the three biggest things that I learned that I can pass on the audience is, one, focus is very, very, very hard, but it can become a habit. So it's muscle memory. So it can become a habit. The second thing is that most successful people are better at focusing than those that aren't as successful. And it's not that they're born with it. It's not inherent DNA. Primarily what they've set up in place is robust systems and processes so that they can focus. With the primary one being, they say no to most everything. They say no to the small things so they can say yes to the big ones. But they have the systems and a process in place to allow for that to happen. And then last but not least, it's really about progress, not perfection. Most of us fail at focus. Most of us fail as the year's coming up. For New Year's resolutions, only 7% excel at completing the New Year's resolution, because most of us set us up for failure by trying to go for perfection rather than progress. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to just maybe for 1 minute a day write a book, you say, I'm going to write a novel in a month. Then it becomes overwhelming. You don't do it. So those are the top three things I learned. I'm going to pause and be quiet here for a second so we can get into other stuff.
No, that's quite a lot. You answered a lot of questions I had already. But when you were picking these chapters to go through, did you feel these were weaknesses you really need to focus on, or these are the top 11, or how did you choose them?
I chose them based on, oh my gosh, imagine if fairy tale land, that I could just focus on sales for this month instead of getting pulled into just answering these emails or running down doing social media posts for what we do, or digging into this thing's all messed up on Amazon for the books, trying to get that fixed. What if I just focus, when I talk about sales, to do that first, so it allowed me that luxury to do the other 11 months. And also it proved to me, because that was actually measurable. So I wanted to do something that I could measure. And I knew going in, if it didn't work, then there's no book, there's nothing, there's no project. Hey, this doesn't actually work. All these things that they've talked about for thousands of years. So that's what we took it on. And then if you've read the book, it's crazy. Not only do we have a record amount of sales for that year, but we actually had a record amount of sales for that year coming out of that month. That's how important focus is. And then the other months, those were just exciting things. What would I lay at bed at night and go, man, wouldn't it be great if I could spend a month just focused on the house, like getting everything organized in the house. And so it all varies on what you're trying to achieve, but that's what got me excited. And then I had to pull back and go, okay, let's be realistic, not only for myself, but also the reader. You're not going to spend a whole month doing that. You just can't. And so you've got too much stuff that's going on. So that's why I pared it back down to, in the book, I think I started with 2 hours a day, but then it really just became, all right, just let's dedicate a half hour a day to whatever my focus is for this month. And so for the listeners here today, that's what the impetus was, is just try to make it bite-sized. And then it's amazing what you can get done when you do that. And it actually it makes you happier and healthier, because you're like, all right, I crushed that 30 minutes. I did the thing that I thought was the most important thing that I needed to do today. So anything else I accomplished today, I'm playing with house money.
Yeah, when we get somebody that's especially newer in real estate, and they want to take on the world, right? They want to do multifamily, they want to do industrial, they want to do it all. And I'm like, no, you've got to focus. You've got to bring it into one asset class in one area. And then you've got to measure your activity. You need to be looking at every day, every month, every week, every month, every year, and see how it's going. And then as you gain, you can take on more down the road. But it's the measuring, I think, and then holding yourself accountable. You know, I was doing an interview the other day, and this lady was on accountability, and you know, it kind of the difference between measuring and accountability. You know, measuring what you do, but then holding yourself accountable if you're not hitting your goals is, and that had to be hard for you. You know, measuring that each one of these topics was different. How did you measure each one of them differently?
Yeah, I mean that's what you got to figure out is that some some are measured differently. So in the
Yeah.
focus on the family, it was the measurable piece could be was that hey, I'm going to call one family member a day that I haven't talked to. And so that's very measurable. Did I make that phone call?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you can figure out. Almost everything can be measured. Just some of it's more qualitative than not. But yeah, that's a good example of one that's
Yeah.
like, okay, this month it's all about family. So it could be measurable. Did I read with the kids for 30 minutes a day?
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you've been missing out on, and that's probably a lot of listeners, the day gets crazy, a call comes in late, they weren't anticipating for work, and then you just go, well, I'm not going to read with the kids tonight, and then it
Yeah.
becomes the next night, and then it just snowballs, and so
Yeah.
and then you look back on the week and look back on a life and go, wow, how did that get away from me? It's because you're not present, you're not intentional with what you're trying to do, or Zig Ziglar would say, is you're a walking generality. You're not focused in the moment. So that's another huge tip is throughout the day, what I do, because I've got the book, I reread it all the time because gravitational pull gets me back to where I was. And
It's a
so
little
when
dog
I
ear,
say,
in case you didn't notice. I go back
yeah,
and wait
yeah.
a second. Mindfulness. I got to look at that one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so
Yeah.
throughout the day, you should check in with yourself. I used
Yeah.
to set 5 alarms to set like periodically just to cause me to go, I'm checking in. What am I doing right now? And what should I be doing? So that
Right.
you don't get down these rabbit holes. And so that's super helpful to be as present as possible throughout the day. And sometimes you can use the technology to set up those alerts to kind of pause and go, what am I doing and what should I be doing?
Right. And then at the end of every day, do you sit down and go, okay, let me go through my day here? And do you track that, or do you just kind of remember it, and or do you write it down? How do you track it?
Yeah, exactly. Now, in the vein of progress over perfection, this is crazy because literally to do this takes 60 seconds. And so I do
Yeah.
it most days, but there's some days that I even laugh because I go, how could I have not taken 60 seconds to do that?
Yeah.
But that's life, right? That's
Mhm.
that's what happens with the focus.
Distractions, other things will get you, and you know.
Yeah, but at the end of each day, I use it in a Google worksheet. I'll put
Okay.
down, was the day a +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. So was it a bad day, and what level was it? And so when you look at that, also I want to add there when I can, when I have time, I put some qualitative items next to it. So what made it a +2, or what made
Mm,
it a -2? And then I
yeah.
started to see pattern recognition of what made a day positive, what made a day negative. And so I encourage all of you to do this because it's super helpful to do that. I didn't say 0 because a day is never neutral. So
Right.
it's +1, +2, +3, -1, -2, -3. And then over time, you can see the average. I'm big into numbers. So you can see your average. Are you going up? Are you going down on that average? So you can kind of course correct. And then you can also course correct during the day. So yesterday, I was heading towards a -1 because I felt like the day I didn't have control over it. And so I was like, let's course correct. Is there anything I can on the schedule this afternoon that I can adjust or move? How can I course correct to get to a +1? So then you become better at over time to understand checking in with yourself. Or it might be I'm at a -2, how do I get to a -1? Or I'm at a +1, how do I get it to a +2? So you can course correct throughout the day as well.
Yeah. And you're saying that focus is trainable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got an office full of
Yeah.
agents I want you to come talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's muscle memory. I mean, there's some other stuff that we won't have time to get the nuances if you have
Right.
a ADHD, but there's stuff that you can do for anyone out there, depending on the level of the focus that you struggle with. But it's really just like anything else. It's kind of that muscle memory.
Right.
You got to make it a habit and just keep at it. It's about that progress, not perfection. I slip. I wrote the book. I have the book.
Yeah.
I slip all the time. So it's really just about getting back on track.
Yeah. But I think isn't the, tracking what you're doing every day and then analyzing it will help a lot. And you can just really, I think that'll be how you'll get the focus. You say, okay, look at, I really lost focus here in the middle of the day. So I really need to focus on that. So I think just really monitoring what you do. You put in the book, trade expectations for appreciation. And that's pretty powerful if you start thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's good for your business relationships, but really good for if you're married as
Yeah,
well. Because a
I can
lot of
imagine.
times you're like expecting, or maybe you have a big team. So
Yeah,
you might be the founder of the company, you might be the CEO, and your expectation is for them to do how you would do it. But that's not
yeah,
necessarily, that's never going to happen. And
right.
two, they might do it better than you. Sometimes they'll do it worse. And that's something as a business owner you need to identify and get the right people on the team, but also understand that, of course, there's a reason why you're at the top of the pyramid as well in some instances. And so it's really about having that grace, but it's really about understanding that not, it's really about appreciation, not expectation. It's that type of thing is easiest seen on a personal side. So if you think
Hmm.
about you're married, it's anything they do, you've got to appreciate rather than expect, oh, you should empty the dishwasher or you should have park the car XYZ way. It's no, just appreciate that they parked the car and didn't run the car into the house or whatever it might be. It's so if you change that mindset, it's super helpful. Not easy to do. So even myself got to remind yourself, hey, it's about appreciation, not expectation. And then obviously as viewers and listeners, you can understand that plays in well with the business world as well. But when you do ask someone to do something, make sure you define what success looks like or define what that expectation or that standard is so that they know what that focus should be. So it's like, here is what we're going to do. Let's get agreement and try to write it down because some people interpret things differently verbally. Your design, your brain will actually hear things
Absolutely.
differently to make it interesting. And so you've got to put it kind of in black and white usually. This is the standard that we're trying to achieve. This is my expectation when you execute on this project, and then check in as much as you can on that project. And I've got some tips on that as well. When you check in with a project, you should ask, how's it going on a scale of 1 to 10? So that and check in as often as possible so you're not surprised. How's it going on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best? And then in time, what you want to do, most people are going to say 7. So you want to remove the safety of the 7. So you go, how's it going 1 to 10? Can't say 7. Because
Yeah.
now they'll say 6, which is pretty bad, or 8, pretty good. And so if you remove that safety of the 7 and check in often, then you know that everyone's focused on the correct things. And also that you've set the expectations at the beginning and you're not surprised because you're checking in as often as possible with that simple question, right? It's a 30-second question. How are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10? Can't say 7.
Yeah. That was brilliant. When I
Yeah.
read that, I'm like, oh my God, because 7 is such a safe answer. And removing it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And you can ask your teenagers this. It's great for personal relationships too. How you doing on a
yeah,
scale of 1? Instead of asking how you doing, people are like, fine. That doesn't really, yeah, that's
yeah, it doesn't
fine.
really give you a
It's
true
just a
answer.
road answer. It's how you doing on a scale of 1 to 10. And then you have to know the person pretty well to not allow them to say 7.
Right.
So test it out. Maybe it's going to be awkward at first. So maybe test it on your server at the restaurant or at your Uber driver. And then when you get more comfortable, then you can start asking. Maybe it's with your teenagers, it allows them to open up a little more.
Sure.
Um, and the follow-up question is really important. So how you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? Then they say that, they say an 8. Then you go, that's great. Why is it an 8? Then they might explain why it's an 8. They'll give you some revelation you probably didn't even know. And then go, how do I get you? How can I help you get to a 10? How could I help get you to a 10?
Yeah. You know, that's something that I really learned not so early on in my career and I probably should have caught on earlier is, we were training people and we are asking how things were going. And some of them really got it, some didn't. And we were just training everybody the same. And I learned that, each individual person needs to be trained to really for each one of them, not just our generic, this is what we do, and it real once we figured that out, which again took surprisingly longer than you would think, what big progress it made. Uh,
Absolutely.
there's another thing you said in the book that really struck me, and it's something in our industry: don't mistake activity for progress. And I say that a lot. I always go about productivity. Um, can you kind of walk us down, in the book when you said that, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the highest of highs is if you think about, say, you're going to run a marathon, is you've got to complete that 26.2 miles, right? And so the activities that leading up to that is that if you did something that wasn't related to running that marathon, but it's activity, it's not going to help you complete 26.2 miles. At the end of the day, that's the goal. That's the expectation to get that done. And so in the modern world, what that looks like is that if you were to look at activity, it could be that you're super busy answering 500 emails and it gave you that dopamine hit because you took that 500. We all love it. It's like, I got 500 emails. I got that down to zero. I get that dopamine hit. Makes me feel good that I got it down to zero. And dopamine, it's good, but it's also the thing that addiction when you think about alcohol or
Yeah.
gambling. And so, did you get the number one thing that you needed done? So, it could be the number one thing you need to do that day is actually make a difficult call or an uncomfortable call to maybe a prospect. Maybe it's a cold call to a prospect that makes you uncomfortable. And you didn't do it because you wanted to push it off and you did the 500 emails.
Yeah.
Or it could be that, hey, I need to call this client. Something happened that's not good, and I need to call them. It's not going to be a great conversation, but it's the most important thing that I need to do today. So what you want to do is replace that busy activity with the big activities. And so don't mistake that activity. You want to think big versus busy. And so you really want to focus on that one thing that's going to make everything else either easier or unnecessary. So a good exercise for everyone to do here is just after this, like take a moment this afternoon and write down what are the 5 things that are consuming your time at work. Write down those 5 things. And then circle the one that's going to make everything else either easier or unnecessary on that list. And that should be your top priority for the day. Now, Joe, we're going to have some fun here, and your listeners can play along and your viewers can play along.
Okay.
Because what we discovered is that there's some unlocks. We always want some unlocks, right? And so there's a power hour. So when should I do that thing that I'm supposed to do? When should I do that big thing? Well, most of us, we work like a phone. Like during the course of the day, it's that battery starts to drain. Yeah. So our cognitive power starts to decrease. So we want to take advantage of when we're the freshest. And generally speaking, for the majority of us, that's an hour after we wake up. It's really a half hour. You get up, you're kind of groggy, and then it's that hour when you naturally wake up. A half hour, you do all your half hour things to get kind of awake, but then it's really that hour after that first half hour. So we're 3 types of birds. So all of us fall into basically 3 categories of bird. You could be an owl, you can be an eagle, or you can be a robin. And so, Joe, I want you to think through, it's Saturday morning. There's no kids getting you up. You haven't set an alarm. There's no noise outside of where you live that's going to wake you up. I know this sounds like a fantasy world, but when would you think you just naturally wake up? If nothing was going to wake you up, when would you naturally wake up?
6:37.
6:30 or 7. Okay, so you would be a robin. So anyone that wakes up 7 o'clock or earlier is a robin. If you're 7 to 10, you're an eagle. Most people are eagles. If you're 10 or later, then you're an owl. And owls, a lot of creative people, a lot of musicians, artists, they're owls, so a lot of creative thinkers. But the majority are eagles. But what you want to do, let's say that 6:30. So you say 6:30.
Okay.
So 6:30, you get up, you brush your teeth, you're doing whatever you do for that half hour. You might do gratitude, whatever it is. So now you're awake at 7. So from 7 to 8, if your schedule allows you, you want to block off that hour and make it your power hour. That's when you want to attack that one thing that's going to make everything else either easier or necessary. Attack it as much as you can. And the beautiful thing is now you've put in that hour, and like I said before, now you're playing with house money because anything else throughout the day is just kind of gravy. Rather than hoping to get to that, and you're exhausted and you can't get to it later in the day, and days slip by because I've done it myself. I'm like, I just have to make that 5-minute call, and then it's like 3 days later, I didn't make that call. So that's all about that power hour. So attacking that one thing as much as you can during that power hour.
Yeah, that's my favorite time, between 7 and, I want to try and be in the office between 8:30 and 9. And I thought it was just because I like to have my morning coffee at that time. I get a lot done, so, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's very productive for me. I sit down and I get on the computer right away and knock it out. Then when I get to the office, I'm not just slammed. I can work with our agents and, so yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, and it's basically you're attacking the day before it attacks you. And then some of you out there, if I heard this, I'd be like, "Oh, give me a break, Eric. An hour? You think I just have another hour that I'm just going to be able to dedicate? Don't you think I would have done that?" So, just if it's just a minute to start with, do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's research that shows just start flossing one tooth. It sounds ridiculous just
Yeah.
to floss one tooth,
Just to
but
get
most of the
started.
time you start with one tooth, you're going to floss the rest. So it's really that first step. And so if you only have a minute, do it. If it's only a half hour, do the half hour. Just do something different than what you've been doing.
Yeah. Yep. I think the baby steps is key. We've all done the year end, or New Year resolution, and I didn't know it was only 7%. That's a staggering number, but I can see it. You can see at the gym how many people in January, February, and March are there, and then they're gone. But it's great advice. You had in there at one point, be intentional in your focus. Can you touch on that, please?
Yeah, it's really just, and people that do yoga are a little better at this. It's really
Yeah.
about being intentional with every moment, every
Mhm.
day, because the way we live our days is the way we live our life. And of course, we know that, but the days slip by, the years slip by, and then we look back and go, wait, what happened? And I've had that happen with even today. I mean, I've got some book projects that the book has been written for 6 years, and it's not the right moment, I keep telling myself, but really, is that it? How do I pull that to the top shelf and really get that one done and get it out the door? And so it's really throughout each moment, each day, just checking in with yourself. And that's why we did the +1, +2, +3 at the end of the day. But checking in with yourself and making sure that you're focused on those big things versus the busy ones. And again, everyone's different. So for some of you, it might be just at the end of the day, what's the one thing that made you the happiest and why? So that could
Mm,
be it.
very good.
Others, you just have a specific time that you check in with yourself and go, it might be mid morning at 11. All right, how did the morning go? What have I been doing? How do I get this back on track? So we forget that we really, for most part, we have control. Obviously, we have bosses, we have clients, we have family, we have needs that come up, but it's really asking yourself intentional as possible. And we can get into a lot of that boils down to saying no to small
Mm,
opportunities, to say yes to big ones.
yeah. I'm losing my voice already. Saying no is something that I've always struggled with, or used to. I don't anymore, but maybe that's just getting older.
Yeah.
Uh, what was your turning point? When did you start figuring out you should be saying no to a lot of stuff? What clicked?
I think what clicked is a lot of us are people pleasers, self included.
Yeah,
I grew up in the Midwest. It's just kind of the mindset.
me
But
too.
what clicked was if I say yes to everybody, then I'm saying no to everyone.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means that if I signed up for 10 different things, let's say I signed up for 10 different charitable things. You're out there, you're like, I'm just doing 10 different charitable things. And then I have to kind of half-heartedly do those. That's bad for me and that's bad for those charities. So rather cut it back to 5 so I can be fully vested in those. Then that was the epiphany for me. Or I like to use the analogy of you got to act like a surgeon. So surgeons want to save everybody they can. They do. Most surgeons, they want to save lives,
Yep.
but they're only allowed to work a certain amount of hours in the operating room because otherwise they become detrimental to that patient. And so that's whenever I kind of struggle with saying no and I want to be that people pleaser, then I realize, wait. I'm like a surgeon. I have a certain amount of yeses, or I have a certain amount of hours that I can perform surgery. And so otherwise I'm a detriment. And so that focus is still people pleasers. You're focused on other people. And so it's a reminder that if you say yes to everyone, you're saying no to everyone. And
Yeah.
so and it's hard because here's an example I use in the book. I'll try to tell the story as quickly as possible.
Oh,
So
take your
there's
time. Yeah.
no way I would be able to do this if I wasn't writing the book or in the middle of the project. But
Mhm.
I was able to do it because of the project. I was like, well, this is a good way to test it. So at our church, I would volunteer for Sunday school. I've got 2 daughters, and I would like to teach their class because I travel quite a bit performing on stage.
Yep.
And so when I'm in town, I want to be fully vested with the family. And so that's a moment that I can be teaching in their class. But invariably, they don't have enough volunteers to handle the boys because at that age they're a little harder to handle, and so they have less volunteers that want to do the Sunday school for the boys. So what would happen is I'd be signed up for the girls, and I'd get a call from the head person and say, "Hey, can you do the boys?" And so before the project, I say, "Yeah, I can do it." And then I'd kind of like, "Well, I'd really rather be at the girls with my daughters."
Mm-hmm.
And so the project comes up. I'm like, this is my moment. All right, I'm signed up for the girls. I'm going to do it. So then I do it. And then they go, "Hey, we're short on boys. We only got a couple days left. Can you fill in and do the boys?" And I'm like, this is time to test it. So I write this nice note. I go, "Love to help out with the boys, but I travel a lot, as you know, and I just want to spend time with my girls. So I'm going to have to say no to helping with the boys." I'm like, send the note off. I'm like, fantastic. That felt good. I did it. See how that's the project. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple days later, I get a note again. "Hey, I know you said no, you can't handle the boys, but we're really in a pinch. Are you sure you can't handle the boys?" I go, "Man, this is really testing me, but I got to do it for this project, for the book."
Right.
So I copy and paste literally the same email I'd sent and put it back, send it back. And they find this lady, they switch her over to handle the boys. And this isn't always going to happen. As my girls say, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. But it turns out that lady actually liked teaching the boys better. It was better for me. So it turned out to be a win-win situation. That's not always going to be the case, but it was a win for me because I said no. I was able to spend time with my girls. So I set up those guardrails. And obviously there's still some shame that came with that because as I said no, I'm like, what am I, this volunteer that's on my terms? I only help the way that I want to help. But yeah, it worked out in the end. And so it's taught me how to say no a lot better. And it's really opened up a lot of big opportunities because I've said no to the smaller opportunities.
Yeah. Our industry is, you'll get new people that want to open the big ones. I want to open a restaurant. And, and a newer agent will a lot of time, they won't ask for their experience. Do you have your financials in place? Do you have money behind you? Or it's just too small of a deal. It's 1,200 square feet at a couple dollars a square foot, and in the end, they're actually losing money by taking the deal on, and they can't say no to these people, so they end up working for them. And it's in the 90 percentile that it never ever happens. High 90, like 95, 96% never happens. And they put all this time and effort into it, yet they've got these other great clients that are getting hurt by them spending time there. And so that's why I want to talk on that one, because it's really something in our industry. Now, I tell our agents, listen, this is too small for you. Have them go to Craigslist, tell them where they can go. They can go to LoopNet, they can go to Crex and get on there for free, or on those sites for free. And they can find something on their own. And then if they find something, then they can call you and work with you. You can negotiate the lease, but putting your time and effort into that is not good for anybody. And so for you, especially if you're trying to build a business. But in your chapter 6, Erik, learning, and you wanted to learn Spanish, and I've got to ask an honest question: do you really want to learn Spanish because your family, your in-laws were talking behind your back? Is that what you're thinking, or do you really want to be able to communicate with them, or did you learn it and not tell them that you were learning it so you could hear what was actually going on?
Oh yeah, it's a good point. It comes in handy with the family if they don't know my level of Spanish. They're catching on a little bit that I can understand most of it now. But no, it was just to be deeper connected with my wife's from Colombia, and so just to be deeper connected with the family, because if you can't tell a joke in a language, it's really your personality's not shining through. So it's just really, yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, I love learning it. It's not a gift. That's what I discovered. I know some people that pick it up right away. I am not that person. So yeah, that's been a great one, and it's good because if you use Duolingo, I think I'm on a 3-year streak. So just making sure I practice it a little bit each day.
It's hard because like we have a lady from Mexico here and a lady from Guatemala, both speaking Spanish, but yet it sounds so different. You're like, oh, good Lord.
Yeah, claro que sí. But fortunately, Colombians got one of the cleaner versions of Spanish, so it's one of the cleaner dialects.
Yeah. Anya's chapter 8 was on empathy. What made you choose empathy to write about?
It's interesting because when people ask me, a lot of the books prior to this one are on digital leadership, and they ask, can you
Yeah.
define digital leadership? And I say one word, empathy.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
one word, empathy. And so I've noticed in my life and talking to a lot of people around the world that it's shared that when you start to have kind of stress and it starts to build up and just you're feeling anxiety, it's because your focus is very inward. And so when your focus is outward with your EQ, ironically, those are my initials, EQ, which stands for emotional intelligence. I don't know
Yeah.
why it's not EI, but it's the emotional quotient. So it's
Sure.
EQ, stands for your emotional intelligence or that empathy. Is that that's when it's ironic because you're helping others, but the person you're helping the most is yourself
Mhm.
when you take that inward focus outward. And so that's why I wanted to have that month on empathy. Um, and it's just a reminder for all of us and to myself as I talk here, just a reminder that when those time crunch starts closing in, when you think you don't have time for anyone else but yourself, that's probably the time you most need to kind of use that emotional intelligence and take that focus inward, outward.
Yeah, because our industry is pretty stressful, right?
Yep.
And so this is a pretty important chapter for our industry because we've got to understand you're under pressure. How are you going to react to it? Positive, negative. So that was very, very important for me.
Or it could be
Um,
as simple as, I mean, this isn't that related to empathy, but it's really you get so busy that you hunker down, so you start canceling those lunches. But you know, Joe, that it's all about relationships, especially the industry that you're in. And then all of a sudden, your business is impacted 6 months, 2 years down the road because you weren't taking the time for the most important things, which is that relationship building.
yeah, yeah. It's so hard to build these relationships or get into these relationships in our industry because you're cold calling and maintaining them is key. And I know we're getting a little long here, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But chapter 9, mindfulness. Um, that one kind of hit home for me. It's could you touch on that one for us, please?
Yeah, so mindfulness is really just trying to be mindful about everything that you do. We talked about a little bit about intention. It's just how can I help myself? A lot of times we spend a lot of time working on our bodies in the
Yeah,
gym. But so a lot of us listeners, you're like me. It's like, I don't have time for yoga. I can't sit there for an hour.
yeah,
Or I'm out of here once we go to the breathing exercise at the end because I don't have time for that. I did the power yoga. I just need to get out of here.
yeah,
But actually, the most important part is that end, that restfulness, being mindful, kind of not running 1,000 miles an hour, but being able to pause and then go, okay, this is what matters. These are the big things. So being mindful and it helps you from a mental, there's a lot of mental illness out there because we're not being mindful. But interesting enough is for those that are A plus overachievers, like most of you are that are listening to this, is that one of the only ways to increase the gray matter in your brain is actually by meditation. So that's one thing I always tell myself. I say I don't have time to meditate, that, hey, that's the only way to increase that gray matter, which helps your memory and all these other great things that you can do. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to sit down on a yoga mat and have like this nice candle lit. It's
right.
also on planes a lot. So where it's just on the plane, I'll close my eyes and kind of try to breathe and just be mindful for 3 minutes, just kind of just taking that pause. And so you can do it as crazy enough on an airplane. I've done it. So it's just remembering to do that.
Yeah, I think in the breathing exercises, it's the first time I did it. I'm like, oh my god, what a difference! It just kind of it takes the weight off, right?
Yep.
So very powerful. And I want to just put if anybody has any that's watching has any questions for Erik, put in the comments. I'll make sure that he sees them, and so I'll reach out to you. But Erik, you wrote in the book in closing. I'm going to use this as the closing is because I don't want to take too much more of your time. We've gone on. I still have a lot of questions, but I want to be aware of your time. You put there's only two reasons to write a book: one to change yourself, or one to change the world. Um, which one was the most? Do you think is most affected by this book?
Yeah, I mean, I always start with the readership of one, which is me,
Yeah,
meaning that if I want to write a book, I'm writing it to do the research for myself. So I know there's gonna be one reader. I'm gonna read it after I do all
Yeah.
the research and the science. I call it the street science, me testing stuff. And then
Mhm.
there's the institutional research, what's been there for thousands of years that people say works. And then I test it out and say, this worked for me, this didn't. This seems to be the marriage in the modern world of what can happen. So to answer your question, it always starts with changing yourself when you write a book. But if you do it well, then the hope is that it also changes the world, that it impacts one other person. If it's that one other person that comes out to me and goes, "Oh, I read chapter 7, that changed my life." And so sometimes you can do both. And so that's whenever you write a book, always understand that it's about two reasons to write a book is to change yourself and then to change the world.
Yeah, well, I really think that this book can really help change our industry. We even got the CREI logo up here. There we are, up here. So between your book and CREI Summit, I think we're onto something here to help this industry evolve. Well, Erik, thank you very much for coming on today. You know, I forgot something, Erik. I
Oh, I
got them.
love those. Those are some sharp glasses there, my
Thank
friend.
you.
You're
I
looking
got them
good,
from
Joe.
CREI Summit still. So I'm a believer, and please keep writing these books because I'm going to keep reading them. For those of you, I'm going to put a link to Erik's book below. Erik, thank you very much for coming on today.
No, thanks a lot, Joe, and thanks for your listeners and for your viewers. I really appreciate it. I love those focus glasses. They look great on you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice and dark. I'll be wearing them all summer long. Well, thank you, Erik. And for those of you watching, thank you for taking the time to watch us today. If you could, please give us a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.